From MTN Sports, welcome to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertsons Safeway.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of the Grizz Insider here on the Montana Television Network. Alongside the voice of the Grizz, Riley Corcoran, I'm Kyle Hansen, and the Montana Grizzlies see their 2024 season come to a close at the hands of South Dakota State, 35-18 down in Brookings. And Riley, obviously a rematch of that national championship game from back in January, but really from start to finish, South Dakota State kind of had this in the bag, and of course, Montana sees their season come to an end.
They certainly did, Kyle, and I think that Montana knew they were going to be up against it. Number one, when the bracket came out, and number two, when you started looking at this matchup a little bit more. South Dakota State, they're the two-time reigning national champions for a reason. They've won 39 of their last 41, just 9 losses this entire decade. And then you put all that into play and you say, okay, now you're going on the road against the team that has the nation's longest home winning streak in South Dakota State. They played the part, every bit of it. Now, Montana, they certainly had some opportunities, and we're going to get into that as well. But South Dakota State's just stout across the board. I feel that there were very similar feels as the game in Frisco 11 months prior, that you had to feel that it was a perfect game. Montana had to play that perfect game, and they squandered a couple of those opportunities. And obviously, when you get down by 2 scores, then 3 scores, daunting against the number 1 defense in the country.
100%. You look at like some of the bigger games the Grizz played this year, whether it be the Davis game, whether it be the Cats, you know, things like that, where it's kind of like self-inflicted mistakes really kind of doom them down the stretch. They're not really doing themselves any favors. And this game, kind of similar, right? You get the fumble on the very first offensive possession for South Dakota State. You get a field goal out of it, can't quite cash in that touchdown that maybe sets the tone a little bit. Then you have a pick in the red zone. You have a couple of offsides that set up a touchdown by South Dakota State to make it 14-3. So it's just little things like that that were really kind of an indictment on the season as a whole.
It was, and really just the microcosm of it all. I know we're going to break it down later on in the show, but just really couldn't put it all together in the same game. And you're right, South Dakota State, they left the door cracked open just briefly, and they did so in Frisco to where a missed field goal. Can Montana capitalize on some momentum? Give them a lot of credit. They neutralized the Grizz in the special teams game. Junior Bergen got his hands on 1 ball in the kick return game, and at that point, it was already 35-3. So, yes, the self-inflicted wounds were tough to take, and especially at the very beginning. When South Dakota State, they'd only lost 2 fumbles on the entire year. So you figure when the Grizz get the ball at midfield, maybe they can score a touchdown at that point. In hindsight, they probably needed to punch it in. It's hard to get inside the red zone on South Dakota State. Then I thought the red zone interception was really costly for the Grizz because they went the length of the field. You get 80 yards on South Dakota State, you feel like you need to score because the Grizzlies started inside their own 10. So just a couple of plays that certainly help paint the bigger picture.
And backs against the wall going into the second half, 21-3, obviously the deficit there. Montana gets that stop on that really long first drive by South Dakota State with the sack by Hayden Harris. Obviously can't quite do anything on the other end, and to me it felt like once the pick 6 happened from Adam Bach, that's when the floodgates like fully opened. And you know, credit to the Grizzlies, they didn't quit, but obviously South Dakota State from that point was fully rolling.
They were, and I think that belief factor went out the window after that pick 6. And you can only imagine what was going through players' heads and the seniors that have put in all that time and that equity into the program. That sure, at that pick 6 when that happened, I'm sure that other thoughts were creeping in, that man, the season's coming to a close and my career is coming to a close, and it's sad in its own right? And I think that on the radio broadcast we were trying to highlight some of those seniors, especially in the fourth quarter when the game was out of reach. It was certainly a nice surge at the end, but it was definitely a consolation prize. It was 35 straight points for South Dakota State, and it really was 3.5 quarters of domination.
100%. The Grizz get a couple of scores down the end, obviously, and obviously they kept fighting too, but man, you really see why South Dakota State is as good as they are as well.
They are, and Kyle, you could tell when they came out of the locker room. They are big up front, they're stout, they're confident, they're a group that's rolling, and they've had a bye now 7 of the last 8 years, and they are the standard. And it's amazing in sports of how it works, how people maybe pass each other up throughout the course of a decade here and there. And now it's Montana maybe searching and looking at the Dakotas, all right, saying we need to find the right formula because these guys have it figured out. And South Dakota State, I imagine they're going to be one of the last teams standing when it's all said and done.
100%. They're the cream of the crop for a reason in the FCS. But we've got a great show here on the Grizz Insider to wrap up the season. Trevin Gradney will join us later on, but coming up after the break, Bobby Hauck will join Riley to break down the loss to South Dakota State.
Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertsons Safeway.
And welcome back to the Grizz Insider. Montana's season comes to a close this last Saturday, falling at the 2-time reigning national champion South Dakota State Jackrabbits, 35-18. The final. Head coach Bobby Hauck here to break it down. And coach, always a tough one when the season does come to a close, and we'll get into the season recap in a moment. But just kind of your thoughts on the entirety of the game. You guys struck first, pounced on an opportunity. South Dakota State certainly flexed their muscles in between, but just kind of your thoughts on the entire game.
Well, it was a good, hard-fought game, and those guys, they have our number. They beat us the last 2 years, and we were hoping to return the favor like we did North Dakota State a year ago, but they got us. They're a very good football team. Their senior quarterback's a terrific player. They're big up front. They do a good job. The defense is really good. It was a pretty good defensive struggle for a good part of that game, but they ended up getting the best of us in the end.
Well, Coach, as the game progressed, and you even told us at halftime on the Grizzly Radio Network that, hey, the two largest comebacks, or two of the largest comebacks, have come against this opponent. So what was kind of the feel in the locker room, trying to obviously keep the guys in it, and will that come back into existence? But what was it kind of like at that point in the game?
Well, I think it's apparent and obvious, as we talk about this, that our guys are always in the game. They play really hard throughout. They care about winning and losing, so they're highly competitive. So there's never anything about, do you think we can get back into this? It's more about what do we need to do to get back into this. And we did some good things. I mean, neither team scored in the third quarter. We needed to get a drive and get down and get another touchdown in the third quarter. Didn't get that done. It was hard fought by our guys. It's kind of like the season. We couldn't quite get there. We're really close. We're a good football team, but we just couldn't quite get there this year. And there's a variety of reasons for that, and we're well aware of it. As you go through seasons, you know what your strengths are, you know what your liabilities are, you try to hide them and enhance the other side of that. And, we won 9 games this year, and we couldn't get that 10th one.
And certainly some great moments. The Tennessee State playoff win, of course, will be one. And certainly happy for the senior class to get that kind of final moment at home for the final win of the season, Coach. And as we talk about the senior class as a whole, what will you remember about this group? 26 seniors in total, of course. They brought a Big Sky championship, a part of bringing a Big Sky championship back to Missoula and going all the way to Frisco. But just when you think of this special senior class, what are some of the thoughts that come to mind for you?
As you and I were talking offline, we have 110 guys on the roster, and they're all unique individuals, right? And we love all of them. They all bring something to the table that makes this team a team. And this senior class, they're a bunch of good dudes. They worked hard in season, out of season. Some of them were here for a year, some of them were here for 7 years. It's just been such a wild time in college football. But this was a special group of guys for who they are and what they accomplished as well. A great competitive, hard-working group that really enjoyed football. They were a joy to coach, and we'll certainly miss them.
Well, Kyle Hansen will talk with Trevin Gradney on the other side of the break. Final question for you, Coach. It doesn't stop this day and age for you guys, so tell us kind of the schedule ahead or what the priorities will be now. But 270 days or so until Grizz football takes the field again against Central Washington. But give us kind of the plan of attack in the short term for you guys.
Well, obviously I wish I was rolling into the office after this to get going on the next opponent, but that's not where we're at. Got to put the pads away. We'll have a plan. We already have a plan for the offseason. I know what we're doing next August, okay? We need to get recruiting. We signed our high school class last week, and now we have to get on to the next phase of it, which is transfer recruiting, and then we'll get back into the high school world about the middle of January. So it's recruiting over the next month. The coaches will need a few days off to recoup, but we aren't going to get those till about Christmas Eve. So we are going to get after it. We'll do a little bit of training, give our guys a couple weeks off to recoup from the season, because it takes its toll physically and mentally on them, and then we'll get back to business in January.
Well, Coach, we certainly appreciate you all season long coming on the Grizz Insider. Thanks for the great season as well, and have a great holiday season with you and the rest of your staff.
Always fun, Riley, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas right back to you as well. Kyle Hansen will talk with Trevin Gradney when we come back on the Grizz Insider.
Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Welcome back to the Grizz Insider, and we're very excited to be joined by Mr. 37 himself from Billings, Montana, Trevin Gradney, as the season comes to a close. But Trevin, it's always great to talk to you and have you here on the show. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. And just you're letting it sink in a little bit, but man, what a career for you for the Montana Grizzlies, and it's got to be pretty special looking back at some of these memories.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's been awesome. Yeah, these past 18 hours now have been, a little bit emotional, but it's been awesome. It's been really cool.
It's interesting because obviously you get to share it with family, friends, right? When you're on the road in a playoff game, obviously we saw your dad there, and you saw the guys you've been kind of grinding with over the last 4, 5, 6 years. So for you, just kind of speaking about some of those moments, right? Obviously the season comes to an end, but you guys can maybe get through some of the emotions and look at, man, you guys accomplished a lot, and you think of the national championship run, playing in 54 games and things like that. Did that come to the forefront a lot?
A lot of emotions yesterday. Seeing my dad after that game was very emotional, and seeing all my roommates' parents, and they've done so much for me and all of us throughout these last 6 years now. A lot of thoughts have went through my mind, a lot of memories, great memories, great memories, and it's been awesome.
Well, and Trevin too, it's interesting because you look at your career, right? And we've talked about this quite a lot. Obviously, it's like you look at guys like you and Ryder and Nick and some other guys who they've kind of worked their way up. Jackson Lee, who it's special teams, then to starters, to all Big Sky Conference honors. And so now that you can maybe reflect a little bit and let it sink in, like knowing what you were able to do, and you were all conference again this year in the Big Sky for the 3rd time in your career. Just how special is that to you, knowing you think of that 2019 Trevin who's grinding in fall camp, and here he is, wearing the 37 and doing all these big things.
Yeah. If you would have told me I would have been 3-time all-conference in this conference, I would have said you're crazy before I got here. I think I knew I had it in me to do all those things, and I knew all these guys around me had it in them. I've watched all those guys work their tails off to get where they are. To see all them get accomplishments and accolades like that has been really cool as well. It's been awesome, man. I wouldn't trade it for the world again, and I'm still reflecting, but it's been cool to reflect.
I want to talk to you about your group of friends, right? Because it is interesting. Like on a football team, it's very high intensity, but you make a lot of friends, and you make essentially brothers in that regard too. But you've been with the same guys throughout it all. Where you look at Ryan Simpson, Ryder Meyer, Ryan Tyrrell, and Nick Osmo, and then obviously you and Junior growing up together back in Billings. I mean, just speak about those guys and just some of the guys that you've gotten to know and then become lifelong friends with.
Yeah. So I lived with those guys for 5 years now, and we've had a lot of fun together. We've had a lot of fun, and getting to do it with June has been awesome as well. I can't even put it into words. We've created a lot of memories, and I can't wait to continue to create more with them. Yeah, I don't even know. I can't even put it into words, but it's been so awesome. Like, so fulfilling, so grateful. I'm so blessed to have been put in that position, and with this group of guys, it's been amazing. Through
it all, when you look at getting the 37 jersey and your teammates, is that what you would say was maybe most special about your time here, and obviously that Frisco run too? Absolutely. Wearing 37's been a huge honor. I don't take that lightly at all. Yeah, I think creating these friendships and the brotherhood we have has been the most fulfilling for me. But Frisco's awesome. Big Sky title was awesome. So many of those home games, man. Those last year playoff run was tremendous. Just so many memories keep popping up. But it's been so cool. It's been quite the run, no doubt about it. And one last question I want to ask you about it was, obviously you mentioned emotional moment with your father afterwards, and obviously your dad played college football over at Montana State. It's now a shared experience for the both of you, right? Getting a chance to be D1 college football players. So just speak to maybe the impact he's had over the years, as through the highs and lows. He's probably been there through it all with you. Yeah, he has. He's been. I can't thank that man enough. He's been a tremendous help, a great resource, and just overall, just a great dad. It's been awesome. I couldn't ask for any other way, and I can't wait to share more memories with him, especially with this rivalry being fans now. That'll be fun. Yeah, it's been awesome. It was a good moment we had yesterday after the game, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So very special, no doubt about it. Well, Trevin, thank you so much for your time as always. It's been an absolute honor covering your career, and congratulations on all the success. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Absolutely. And coming up, Riley and I will look ahead to the season at large for the Montana Grizzlies after the break.
Take coverage of the Grizz with you. Download our app for your favorite mobile device today. Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Welcome back here to the Grizz Insider. Great stuff from both Coach Hauck and Trevin Gradney. And Riley, I think that's a fitting way to transition as we kind of look at the season as a whole, right? And I think it starts with this senior class, right? Because fans or people looking at this program might see the season as a disappointment, which to an extent it is. But you look at the senior class, and they were a big part of a group that got to a national championship. A lot of starters came back to play for the Grizzlies this year, and you have to look at their legacy and what they did for this program. Let's look at the big picture, right? I totally agree with you when it comes to the senior class. The heartbeat really
really of the Montana run last year to Frisco, Texas, was because of what happened in the locker room, right? And these guys that had been invested in the program for multiple years, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 years because of the extra COVID year that we've seen. And these guys certainly are a part of that. And let's not forget, they brought the first Big Sky championship in 14 years here, and a lot of them were big contributors. And this year, still, we're trying to carry the flag, and there were great moments back and forth. But that was an awesome interview with Trevin Gradney, and he epitomizes what it means to be a Montana Grizzly, a guy that never got a chance. It's 17 years old, graduates high school, and had to take his licks against Sammy Akem and Samori Toure, and then all of a sudden turns into number 37. So one of many great stories, but absolutely, let's not forget what this senior class did. Our thanks to all of them, 26 seniors in total, and they were pretty amazing in their time as a Montana Grizzly.
Big part of a lot of big wins, no doubt about it. Getting the program back to where a lot of people wanted to see a year ago. And so obviously, as we turn the page and look at the season, 9-5 for the Grizzlies, it's very similar to that 2022 run. The preseason pick to win the Big Sky Conference, your preseason top 5, I believe, number 3 in both seasons, and then it just kind of ends in the second round of the playoffs. So fans, justifiably so, are just kind of feeling a little down and maybe a little let down by not getting to where they thought they should be.
Well, absolutely, and I think that it's fair to say that Montana football on a positive trajectory the last couple of seasons, right? To when Coach Hauck came back, to then building it to quarterfinal runs, and then last year, of course, making it all the way to Frisco. This year, the expectations were high. They always are here in Missoula, but the fact you make it to Frisco, you have 26 seniors coming back, I think 16 returning starters at the beginning of the year. You're hoping to be there at the very end and not to be done in the second round of the playoffs. And the Grizz just couldn't quite put it together one way or another. And you're right, very reminiscent to 2022, to where that signature moment wasn't quite there for the Grizz. You're looking for the big win or the opportunity where Davis comes into town. Okay, that's a moment to do it. Weber State, I hate going back to that game too many times. They win that game. All of a sudden, you're setting up a different kind of formula for when UC Davis comes to town. So there's a lot of games and plays that maybe you could go back and look at how the season flipped for Montana, but just quite simply, they couldn't get it done in the biggest moments, and unfortunately, that's why their season ended in the second round.
And you look at the season, it kind of breaks into 3 sections, right? Because you look at the non-conference slate, which was a wild slate and really aged well when you look at some of the teams that they ended up playing, going 3-1, and that obviously the loss to North Dakota probably stings a little bit with the way they finished the season. Then a fast start to conference play where the offense is one of the best offenses in the entire country, and then they regress a little bit down the second half, but then the defense, not so good in the first half of conference, but then gets better, but obviously it's the big games that people are probably going to remember.
Yes, and I like that you break it down into 3s, because that's what it was. It felt like 3 chapters to an entire season. Non-conference, wild in its own right. KLE-EIAT, that Western Carolina game, felt like the signature moment of the regular season when Montana stormed back from 18 down to win. Then you look at what the offense did to start. I mean, 43 points per game, over 500 yards per game in the first half of the season. They were getting ready to put up record numbers. Defense left some to be desired. And then after the bye week, everything flipped to where Montana's offense kind of lost their consistency, and the defense continued to get better throughout. So wild to think that Montana's offense, the back half of the season, last 7 games compared to the first 7, they averaged 20 fewer points per game. So it's just a steep drop-off, and just the identity of this team, I'm not sure we ever quite found the consistent identity in this one. And obviously, if you want to be one of the last team standings, or quite frankly, one of the last teams that's left here in the final 8 this weekend, you need to have that kind of identity.
And you saw exactly that with South Dakota State. Well, the Grizzly season comes to a close, but we'll wrap things up here on the Grizzly Insider after the break.
There's more coverage of the Grizzlies online anytime at montanasports.com. Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Well, as we wrap things up here on the Grizz Insider, the FCS playoffs march on with the top 8 teams, and looks like the committee got it right because it is the top 8 teams moving on to the quarterfinal round.
It is, Kyle, and if you look at it, only 2 games were decided by single digits, so dare I say that it's pretty convincing that the top 8 were the top 8, and we love this about the FCS playoffs in its own right, that it values the regular season, to where if you're not one of those top 8 seeds, it is going to be a tough road. Not only do you have to play on opening weekend, but you're going to have to win multiple road games, and that's just very difficult to do. The winning percentage in the second round of the FCS playoffs is 80% for home teams. So, and this year, of course, 100, 8 for 8 winning there. So it'll set up some intriguing matchups this week. I think that matchup in Bozeman on Friday night, Big Sky battle, we'll see the revenge factor. Idaho feels they're healthier coming into this matchup. I know UC Davis and South Dakota, another really intriguing matchup, and we'll see. Can there be any upsets? It's went all chalk right now, and I think all the way down to Frisco. Will we see an upset in this bracket? It has the potential to maybe go chalk all the way. It'll be a fun next couple of weeks.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, no doubt about it. Well, the Grizzly Insider is going to take a break for the next few weeks as we wrap up football season, but we will have some shows when basketball season rolls around, so we'll have you covered all the way through then. But until then, we're going to take a little bit of a break. Riley, enjoy some well-deserved time off, and have a happy holidays.
Right back to you, and thanks to everyone for following along, and for Greg and everyone behind the scenes here on the Grizzly Insider. It's been a fun fall, Kyle.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for everything, and we'll see you next time on the Grizzly Insider. But until then, have a great weekend.